Good evening. Does this work?
Make sure they do.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Goethe Institute Washington, the German Cultural Center. I'm Heribert Urstrin, the director of the Goethe Institute Washington. Thank you for coming to this evening's event. A special welcome to our guests, AC Grayling and Christopher Hitchens, who will debate Professor Grayling's new book, Among the Dead Cities, and his deliberations on the moral legacy of Allied area bombings in World War II. Why this debate in a German cultural institute? I have to admit that I had doubts at first that this would be an appropriate venue for this debate. And there were two reasons for my doubts. First, in an emotional reaction, I felt shame. Because, you see, I think that a person or a group of persons who committed atrocious crimes and caused unimaginable suffering to so many people should not dwell on their own suffering. Secondly, some people might misuse the arguments and conclusions in Professor Grayling's book, as he himself is very much aware of. And in this context, some other people might be suspicious of our motivation for having this event here. Please let me be very clear about this. Nothing in Professor Grayling's book can change the historical evaluation of and the judgment on what Germany and Germans did during the Third Reich. Modern Germany will have to live for a long time with its past. However, never forgetting the history of the last century, we, and especially we at the Goethe Institute, are committed to work for a common future, hoping that certain things will never happen again. To achieve this, we want to learn from the past. And I hope tonight's debate will be one opportunity to think about what the moral questions raised in Professor Grayling's book mean for all of us today. I would like to thank Walker and Company and the Politics and Prose bookstore for suggesting this event and their cooperation in organizing it. Thank you for your attention, and now please welcome George Gibson with Walker and Company.
Save it for them. My name is George Gibson, and I am the publisher of Walker and Company, a book publisher in New York City. And I also want to start out by thanking Heribert and the Goethe Institute and the wonderful local bookstore you have here in Washington, D.C., Politics and Prose, for sponsoring and hosting this event. We at Walker and Company have the honor this month of publishing AC Grayling's new book, Among the Dead Cities. We have not, and I should add at this point to be fair to all of you, but I should add the word yet, we have not yet had the honor of ever publishing Christopher Hitchens. But things in publishing are circular, and one never knows. Though I, like you, no doubt, have had the pleasure of reading him for many, many years. What distinguishes Anthony Grayling, from me anyway, is his desire and ability to make philosophy and the deep and often open-ended questions it raises both accessible to ordinary people and relevant to their daily lives. I don't know how this evening is going to go, but I do know that at some point during this conversation, the Allied bombing of civilians in World War II, more than 60 years ago, is going to be connected to our world today. Anthony Grayling is a professor of philosophy at Birkbeck College at the University of London. He is the author of many other books, including a biography of the great French mathematician and philosopher René Descartes, which Walker will publish this October. He is a fellow of the World Economic Forum, and he contributes regularly to a number of publications, including The Economist, The Financial Times, and The Observer. And he is also a member of a regular panel on the BBC World International on international affairs. Christopher Hitchens, I suspect, needs little introduction to the people in this room. A prolific author, journalist, and critic, he is famously unafraid to have a strong opinion and equally unafraid to change that opinion over time. When we created a short list of people we wanted to approach to have a dialogue with Antony, he was at the very top of the list, and we're thrilled that he accepted. You therefore have before you two of the most engaging and interesting minds in the world today, and I will now get out of their way and let you hear them. But before I do, let me just say they will each speak for about 15 minutes, 20 minutes, after which I'm sure they'll interact with each other, and then we'll take questions from the audience. After that, books will be available outside, and I suspect that if you wanted to procure a signature or an inscription, you could probably do so if that appealed to you. Could I also ask that you check to see that all your cell phones are turned off and that you refrain from taking photographs while they are speaking? And now, without further ado, Antony Grayling and then Christopher Hitchens. I think that's the order, isn't it not?
Thank you. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much, George. Thank you very much indeed, George, and thank you so much to the Goethe Institute for hosting this. I must begin by saying straight away, picking up a point that Dr. Ustrin made there about the delicate aspect of this, particularly in a setting like this. From the Allied point of view, that is from the point of view of the Western Allies, the United Kingdom and the United States, the Second World War was a just war, a war that had to be fought because it was being fought against aggressors. And there were aggressors who, and was known at the time and more fully known afterwards, perpetrated some horrendous atrocities, some horrendous crimes against humanity. And one of the greatest crimes that the Western Allies could have committed during the course of the war would have been to lose it. And that's a point that I'm very alive to, and it's one that we have to bear in mind when we prescind from the larger picture of the war and look just at our own consciences on the Allied side of the struggle, to ask ourselves whether everything that we did in it passes muster from the moral point of view. Is it really the case that all the endeavours that we made, all the decisions that we made, all the actions we took in the course of that war are unquestionably good ones from the point of view of the overall aim of the war? Now I should just say a little bit about how I came to write the book, because it explains in a way the conclusion that the book comes to at the end. And when I was a very small boy, what I wanted to be was a Spitfire pilot in the Battle of Britain. This was a very common ambition on the part of small boys in the decade or two after the Second World War. And there were some difficulties like time travel and better eyesight and things like that that prevented me from fulfilling this ambition. So I did the next best thing, which was to read as much as I possibly could about the air war. First, of course, about the Battle of Britain itself, and then, as time went by, I read more and more about the bombing war. And almost immediately noted that there was a tone of doubt, a tone of uncertainty in the historical accounts given. Almost every historian of the bomber war found it necessary to provide justifications for one important aspect of it, namely that aspect of it which involved area bombing of urban centres, the deliberate and systematic targeting of thousands of tons of bombs, indeed hundreds of thousands of tons of bombs, on civilian populations. And as soon as I noticed that there was this equivocation, it felt to me as though here was something that had been too little discussed in a way, too much left to the concluding chapters of these histories. And then I came across a remark in one of them which said, this question whether it was right or wrong to conduct area bombing as opposed to tactical bombing, specific bombing of genuine industrial military targets, is a question which we must leave to the moral philosophers. And I thought, well, the day will come when I'll try to take up that challenge, and that's what I've done in this book. And in order to take up that challenge, and in order to be scrupulously fair to all sides of the argument about this, I felt it necessary to talk about the history of the area bombing campaigns, which I've done in the book. Also to talk about the intentions and the knowledge on the part of people who conducted it, and that meant looking at the discussion about bombing as a weapon of war in the decades before the Second World War, And I mean, just to give you an example, one astonishing thing was that in 1899, at a Hague international conference in The Hague on armaments and peace, it was decided by the international community present there to outlaw throwing hand grenades out of balloons. This is before there were aeroplanes. Already it was clear, coming up on the horizon, that developments in technology were introducing potential weapons and potential strategies of war that could be tremendously destructive. And so as early as that, as early as the late 19th century, this first endeavour was made. And all during the decades before the Second